and that's why they have been putting out the feelers. We will be shrinking the budget for the coming year.
And that is the G factor. That's the government spending.
So we have a double whammy now. We are so reliant on government spending. The economy is so structurally dependent on government spending. But next year, government don't have money to spend.
So we can be like the US and print.
So we can, well, US, at least people want to keep US dollars. Who wants to keep ringgit?
You know? When the new notes came out, I thought, wow, that's indicative of money being spent, but there is no verification to that. But printing money is not the best way.
Just a further point that needs to be addressed, or at least begin to be addressed, is the issue of very high levels of household debt.
Yes, you mentioned that. Yes.
I think this is important though, because if you look at the numbers, and I just did some research this morning on numbers. In 2000, ratio of household debt to GDP was 47%, whereas in 2007 it has gone up to 67% of GDP. Now, who's borrowing this money? Of course, household is borrowing the money, and large part of this money is going towards house financing and car and motorbikes and so on and so forth. Now, this tells you that increasingly. Now, the first point to make is that 67 is, some economists will argue, is manageable, it's fine, and so on and so forth. It is manageable in good times though. But when you have a crisis in your hands, for the household, is it manageable? Is a question mark.
Yes.
Already the US...
One person loses their job, one income earner loses their job. A lot of pressure on the family.
Exactly. So for example, what do you call it, in the US, where it hit 67, 70%, the alarms were already out. Hey guys, you're spending too much than what you're earning now. And therefore, what was then, the studies actually clearly showed, the reason for that is because of stagnant wages in the US though.
Right.
Now I looked at for Malaysia, and you find similar pattern though. Exactly. So as a result of stagnant wages, people are leveraging the banks as a result of cheap money that's available, low interest rates and so on, in order to support a certain kind of a lifestyle. So the way forward would be for a country like Malaysia to look at wages. So we have to begin to pay our workers higher wages though.
Right.
All right. Now let's look at the where they are borrowing them, which area they are borrowing the money from. House financing is 55% of total household debt. Car financing is 23%. Now this is something the government can do something about, even in this coming budget though, by moving into public transportation.
Okay.
In a very, very big way though. Now this will also support the call at the global level on climate change. Now there's a call to actually go what is being called a low carbon economy. So this is the way to say, okay, now we will definitely put up all this, what has been promised for donkey years though, which never been materialized. A decent, efficient, affordable public transport. That can actually bring down house debt. Now, one of the reasons why the cost of living is going up, which we know, is privatization and purely planned privatization. Something should not be privatized, but it's privatized. We have to take it back, of course, at some point in the future. But the point being that it is a cost to the family. So the family is using the banking system and cooperatives and so on in order to support a lifestyle. Right. Now, of course, you can say, no, where is the problem though? People's lifestyles are so high, we can't, so is it the problem with us or with the system in which we work? It's some combination of both. Because when you have so cheap labor, liquid in front of you, money available to you, your tendency is to borrow money. You don't realize at the end of the day you have to pay back though.
At one point, if you're running deficits, at one point the interest rates might go up, especially if the US and other countries raise interest rates.
Can I just interject in that one? Actually, these numbers is even worse than the 97 financial crisis.
Yes.
That the household debt in relation to GDP is higher now than in 1997, and that is, that really striking.
In fact, this morning I looked up some Malaysiakini numbers. I was just a bit stunned when I looked at the numbers. Now, breakdown for loans, household, in 2000 it was 34.4%. In 2007 it went up to 59.9%. Households, okay? Now, for business in 2000, the borrowing was 65.6%. In 2007, it came down to 44.1%.
So business are actually borrowing less.
Yeah, and households are borrowing more.
And households are actually borrowing more.
Yeah. And this is to support a lifestyle.
Very dangerous.
That doesn't reflect well.
Yeah.
There's a mismatch. Yeah.
So we are, it's just like the country, we are also spending beyond our means.
Yeah.
So this is not a good reflection, and definitely it shows that this is very vulnerable, vulnerable to shocks.
So you mentioned about wages. Do you think our employers are prepared to pay higher wages? What would need to happen for people to get higher wages?
I think what typical economist arguments about wages is, if you just increase wages, say today I'm earning 1,500, just increase it to 2,500. What you get is you get inflationary scenario, because it's not tied to productivity.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, it's productivity, and productivity relates to our human capital, our investments in education, our values in the merit system, and so on. And
But the government might argue they are heavily invested in human capital. They're trying to drive education. Would you agree?
frankly speaking, Malaysian budget proportion, spent on education is among the highest in the region.
Okay.
So the amount of money we spend on education relative to our budget is very high. It's in the region of 25%. Singapore spends only about 19%. The problem for us is, where is that money going to?
Okay.
As you can see in the
So on
audit
paper, there's enough
Yeah.
investment, but in actually reality, when it comes out, we don't have good
I
graduates.
mean, just in the audit report today, written in Malaysiakini as well, they spend 8 times the price for landscaping in a school.
In 5 billion, ever since the PPSMI, General Mathematics and Science in English, 5 billion is what the minister confessed to have spent.
Okay. So I think we already identified 2 key areas. One you mentioned is public transport, which will help us to lower borrowings and help us to be more environmentally friendly.
That's a major sector.
You mentioned about wages, and now we talked about education. What are the other areas going forward? What are the key drivers you think the government needs to address?
Well, the issue about operating budget being a lot more than the development budget has been a chronic situation. You have, when Mahathir started privatization, this mantras, among other things, calls for reduction of the civil service, in the reduction of government expenditure.
That's right.
But surprisingly, and most ironically, is going up, almost doubling or
So you're actually paying more for doing less.
for doing less. And the development budget has not increased likewise. In fact, lagging behind. He would have. I think for the last, let's say 200, you can quote on that numbers. I didn't memorize that numbers, but you could see very well that that while privatization was already in place, the operating budget still goes up and up.
But the government argue that that civil servants are still getting paid very lowly. Our teachers, our police officers, junior civil servants are actually getting paid very poorly.
From the operating budget side, the civil servants, the pay component of the operating budget is actually the largest component. It forms approximately 30%. The problem is, our operating budget actually increased from 80 billion in 2004 to 160 billion today. Doubled in about 5-6 years.
Okay.
Now, where did all the money go to? And 30% went to civil servants. We agree, civil servants' pay need to increase. But the problem is, their pays didn't increase by that much. The problem is, they have been hiring a lot of civil servants. I think to a large extent, to soften the unemployment blows of our fresh graduates.
So it's like a social program, like
Yes.
an unemployment provident fund. Instead of giving unemployment benefits, we take them into
That's why I
the
think we've got to readdress the issue about productivity. Yes, we have got to go on a higher income regime. This country has been sort of forced by the government to have a low income regime, and we're still through influx of all these foreign workers. Okay, and that's the reason why we are not able to move into a higher value chain in terms of our productivity and our kind of products that we produce. So in a way, we are quite in a catch-22 situation. You want to go on the higher income regime with higher economy. A high income economy means is to do with productivity.
Okay.
The cost per unit of any product,
Exactly. Yeah.
services or any tangible manufacturing product must be its optimum.
Yep.
But you have here a situation whereby we are just, that's the reason why we're still competing with Vietnam, with Thailand, because we cannot
We
move
might
up
be
in that
losing
direction.
actually.
We're losing on the human capital, talking about a human,
Yeah.